What's up, good foodie people? We're back for another episode of the Bigger Than Food podcast. I am your host, Apollo Woods. Many things, OKC Black Eats, Bigger Than Food Foundation, real estate, yada. Right? A lot of things. And every time I get on here, I tell you that we have an exciting guest to talk about it. Guess what? We do. We have another exciting guest to talk about. And quick story. I was following her, not realizing I was following her. This is from my time in Houston. I saw these tours about in South Dallas, and they're just writing something. Hey, this name keeps coming up. Fast forward, get to Oklahoma City, see that she has a cookbook. So I'm trying to see, how the cookbook thing works. Next thing you know, we end up connecting on social media, and I have the privilege of getting her on the podcast. Now, she is a lot of things. Now I'm gonna read to you her bio, a little bit of it, so you'll see how dope the future PhD, future Dr. Berry Mitchell is. Dr. Berry, I'm gonna just say it right now. I'm putting it out there in the atmosphere.
Thank you.
Dr. Berry Mitchell. Dr. Berry Mitchell is the founder and CEO of Nostalgia Black Group, which is a multimedia company whose care business is preserving Black culture, Black history through writing, public speaking, tourism, technology. She hails from Sherman, Texas. Now, I don't know if y'all know many Black folks from Sherman, Texas. Guess what? She's from Sherman, Texas. Spent a lot of time in Houston, but she's done a lot of amazing things. And one thing that we'll talk about is her Soul of DFW tours. Now, we both have an affinity to love food. We love culture. We love Black people. We love all things related. So I'm going to bring on my guest for episode 12, Dr. Berry Mitchell.
Hey,
what's going on? I'm doing great. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and talk about all the amazing things that you're doing in Texas.
I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan of OKC Black Eats. I'm a fan of you, Apollo. I admire the work that you've done as well. So I'm happy to be here.
Good. Now, that's cool. But it ain't about me today. It's about you and all the amazing things that you're doing. Okay, so now I shared your bio, but I think people need to hear exactly from you who you are and what you do. Now, no, I don't want you to tell us what you do.
Yeah.
I want people to know who you are.
Tell
us who you
are. The kind of condensed version that I tell people is that at the end of the day, I am just this girl who grew up in Sherman, Texas, and today I'm a food writer and historian based in Texas. That's the short version. I love Black culture, and as Apollo said, I have a lot of different ways that I preserve Black culture and Black history. One of those ways is through events. The events that he mentioned is the Soul of DFW bus tour, and that's actually probably how I meet a lot of people. I'm kind of behind the scenes though, so some people may not even know that I'm the one who operates it, but that's the way I like it. But as he mentioned, Soul of DFW, we've been around since 2018, and essentially it combines my passions for both Black food and history. So they kind of marry each other on the bus tours, and I always tell everybody it's an immersion into Black culture, because two of the methods that I'm using right now are through food and history. But, in the past, I've also kind of delved into art, into music. So all of those things and much, much more, we know, make up Black culture. And so that's how I'm using my bus tours for now.
Awesome. Now, I like to pick people's brain and get into more of the why of things. People, I'm pretty sure you get this because I do. What's your favorite restaurant and the superficial things that they see out front. But in this conversation, we want to peel back a little bit and get into your brain, because I'm certain that there are people who are going to be inspired about how you got to this place in your journey. So yes, you're likely known for the work you do with the Soul of DFW tour. Let's go back to the early days. Woo-hoo. How did this even start? Where was the point where you decided I wanted to do culinary events? What was the early days of this journey?
The early days were rough. like really rough. So I'm gonna take you all the way back to 2016, 2017. I was actually planning the first brunch festival. At that time, you know, I know Apollo knows about brunch and stuff like that. He's posted about it before. But at that time, it was still kind of new-ish, you know, and it was a quick buzzword. And I thought to myself, I wanted to do an event that was going to kind of celebrate brunch as we know it and as it would, you know, soon come to be. So I did that event, and honestly, it was not a disaster, but I could definitely see that I had some pitfalls. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, it's not where my passion was. And so it took me failing at that event to kind of going back to the drawing board and thinking, you know, I need to do something that feels more like me, that resonates with my spirit. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what that was going to be. I took a vacation, and on the vacation, in the back of my head, I was kind of thinking about, you know, who am I? What do I want to produce? What does that event look like? And I didn't know, but on this vacation, I couldn't decide. I always take a tour when I'm anywhere that I am, whether it's international or domestic. And I do that so that I can see what other people's cultures are like. And, you know, different cities also have different cultures. It's not just relegated to race or ethnicity. So anytime I'm anywhere, I'm going to be on a bus tour 9 times out of 10. This particular time, I couldn't decide if I wanted a food tour or if I wanted a history tour. And so I thought, oh my God, why didn't I think about this before? Maybe there are other people like me who are in love with both food and history, and this will be a way to kind of bring those together. And so that's how it started out. Soul of Dallas was born at that point in January of 2018. And then later on, we expanded to Fort Worth. So I renamed it Soul of DFW. So that's how it was born, honestly.
I still feel like you're missing out on some good parts. For the person who is really trying to create a campaign, they have this idea in their head. I know in the journey of creating, whether the things that we do,
Yeah.
how it started is not how it's shaping up to be. And you said something key, but you also didn't quit. You said you thought it was a failure. Well, I'm going to change that word to be it was an opportunity for you to improve.
I like that.
Right.
I
So
like that.
what was it about for you yourself? I know we have high expectations of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Why did I consider it a failure?
Why did you think it was a failure?
So that's a great question. I'm sure everybody's probably wondering that. So I considered it a failure because number one, attendance. I had a decent amount of people there for a first event. I think I probably had around 200, between 200 and 300 guests there. You know, obviously when you go to brunch festivals today, it's thousands, right?
Right.
And so, but we did end up getting around somewhere between 200 and 300. I can't remember what the exact number was. So number one, that was one reason why I thought it was a quote unquote failure. The second one was, and hopefully it's okay if I share this here. I think it'll be okay. You can stop me, Apollo, if not. The other reason was the biggest reason for me, and that was I had secured these vendors. This is actually the first time I've mentioned this publicly. Only like 3 people know about this. So I had secured all of these vendors. It was never meant to be a Black brunch festival. That's what it turned out to be. When I initially planned it, I wanted to include everyone. I was like this Pollyanna, rose-colored glasses. Yeah, we're gonna excel. And so I got these sponsors. I was so excited about bringing everybody together. And I did all of this over the phone. It was myself, phone, and actually it was predominantly email. That's what it was. And so I had myself and also a girlfriend of mine who's also African-American assisting me. That's important because we did everything online. And so when I went to actually pick up checks to get, you know, money in hand and things like that, I noticed that people started making up excuses as to why they weren't available to come to the brunch festival. One person literally told me to show up at this time to pick up the check. I went at that time. They came out, saw black me, and said, "Oh, you know what? I think the manager left with the checkbook and he won't be back until tomorrow." The
Come
whole
on
check.
now.
And so I was like, wow, this is awful. But I still rolled through with it. The day of the event, or actually the week before the event, I just had a lot of people deciding that they didn't want to participate. They started asking more questions about what the list was looking like, what the demographics were. Well,
So you're being profiled.
I'm being profiled. Thank you. So essentially, I ended up being profiled, and they, assumed, as they were correct ultimately, that it would be a lot of Black folks, a lot of us, because we love our brunch. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And so the day of the event, I actually ended up having to pay out of my own pocket. So I spent money on that, and a lot of people, they didn't know that, because I wanted them to come out and just have a good time. I didn't want to come out. I come from the old school camp where you show up with your game face on, you don't complain, and you just make sure everybody's there to have a good time. So while I was there, I will never forget, like, I'm paying out of pocket for people to eat because I did not have enough vendors there for them to enjoy the food. So I actually paid like 3 vendors to come and serve actual meals to people, like full plates piled high meals, because I wanted them still to enjoy themselves. And I believed in the concept itself. But those 200 or 300 people that were there, I was walking around, like making sure it wasn't no trash around and stuff. And I heard a small group of my people huddled in the corner talking about how it was like a whack party, basically. And I was like, I wanted to die, Apollo. Like, I literally wanted to die. It hurt me so much because I felt like I did all of this for us. I went through all of this behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, I didn't get any appreciation for it. And then on top of that, somebody else turned around, a larger company turned around, took that concept, and they're still going today. I ain't gonna say no names, but they're huge. And I knew it would be back in the day, because at that point, nobody was doing it yet. So they went on to make this large event, and I had to hear people talking about how whack mine was and how they were so glad this other one came. It hurt, I'm not gonna lie. So that is the true story of why I considered it a failure, and why I really felt like I needed to go back to the drawing board and do something that I was more so invested in. I was passionate about brunch, but I knew it was bigger than food, just like this podcast. I knew it in my heart, and I felt like that quote unquote failure, or that missed opportunity, whatever it is you'd like to call it, I felt like that was a sign that I needed to pivot to something different. You got it out of me.
Got it out. Got it out. So that, I guess that would be an exclusive on the podcast.
That is an exclusive, yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I like and I appreciate the way you shared that transparency, and you're going and doing something that you believe had not been done.
Yeah.
So you found a place in the marketplace that was going to serve a need to help businesses, and you dealt with a lot of different experiences.
Yeah.
And the experience that we share is when I first started doing brunch here in Oklahoma City. There were several restaurants I went to because I'd done brunch and happy hour in Houston for a number of years, so I knew what I was doing. But they said no, because we already have brunch. I said, no, you serve breakfast. And then my first experience, my first restaurant that I hosted at, there were a lot of different things that have happened, and I have never worked with that restaurant again. But I will say, as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, as someone that is doing things purposely and building community, those risks that you take are those necessary lessons that you needed to learn early to then determine what direction that you're going. So that experience happened. You took some vacation, but why didn't you quit? Why did you say from that experience and from hearing what people said, and someone made something bigger is relative. Why didn't you quit?
Crazy. I don't know. I didn't quit. So initially, I did try to think about, I wanted to salvage it in any way possible. And honestly, if you go look up Southwest Brunch Fest, I might even still be paying for the domain name. I don't know. I didn't want to let it go. And I had all of this merchandise I had purchased. I had signage. I had the domain. I had all of this stuff invested in there. I really wanted to like reuse it or revamp it initially. It wasn't until I was on that vacation that I started thinking, I was just drawn to it. I don't know. I started thinking about everything else that was going on in the city at that time, and in the city of Dallas. And there were history tours, some very phenomenal history tours that had actually just started also. And they were fairly new, but I knew that their main focus was history. And so I thought that this would be a better reflection of myself. I thought that one of the ways that I could put my stamp on it was just by pouring my all into it. And I thought, you know what? I did the best that I could for Southwest Brunch Fest. It just didn't work out. So maybe I should just try. I think that's, I was actually telling somebody else about myself, about myself. I think the one way that I kind of stand apart from a lot of people and is that, and you may also feel the same way as an entrepreneur. I'm not afraid to try. I'm not afraid to fail. I know it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but I'm not afraid to put myself out there because I've failed at so many other things before. I figure, let me just try. What's it going to hurt? That's my attitude anytime I go into something.
Right. I mean, and I would say failure or not coming up short, it's a part of the process. I mean, it's definitely a part of the process because without experiencing those failures or sometimes it's a complete failure. Sometimes it's like, man, that was wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, all right, I need to recalibrate to figure out what makes it authentically me. And what I enjoy about hearing you talk about this discovery of food and culture is your background in writing and of course being an author. So talk to me about the book, because I want to bring these things together. From you have Brunch Fest and you have your book, right? Some amazing recipes in there, right?
Yep.
How as a before we get to the book.
So the book,
why do you love writing? And in terms of your love for writing, how did that connect to wanting to expose or highlight Black culture and food culture?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to plug this in real quick. So the book idea, that was kind of born from, I got my master's degree in creative writing, which a lot of people are not aware of that. I've always loved writing. I remember when I was a little girl, probably like in kindergarten, I used to say I wanted to run my own magazine. And so I was such a nerd. I used to doodle like all of this stuff and trace Essence magazine and Jet magazine back in the day. I used to trace the font and tell my mama that I wanted to start a magazine. And then at one point I was really into poetry. And I used to read a lot as a kid. So that's where my love of reading and writing came from. And as I mentioned, I got my master's degree from SMU in creative writing. And I wrote this paper about Black food history, Southern food history specifically with Black folks. And I sat on it. That was my thesis. And I had no plans to do anything with it. I mean, what do you do after that? You just kind of sit on it. Most people don't do anything with it. And I had this friend of mine named Sunny. And Sunny is an amazing photographer. And also he does some work with graphic design and things like that, or used to. And this particular time he had reached out to me and he said he was interested in doing more food photography. And he knew I cooked. I was at that time, a former culinary instructor. And so he said,
Wait. Hold on. Hold on a second. I didn't know this part. I didn't know that culinary instructor was on the resume, right? So
yeah, that
so
was, yeah, I was a culinary instructor for myself. Like I did it personally out of my home for a little while. And then I got hired. I put a little portfolio together because people used to compliment me on my pictures and like on my vision on the plate. So I put a little portfolio together. And this is actually how I got into food history. So this is another exclusive. So I put my portfolio together and took it into Williams Sonoma. And I met with the lady who was doing the hiring for the instructors at that time. And I just told her, she asked me if I'd been to culinary school, and I told her no. And she was like, okay, well, like your food looks great. You can cook, obviously. Are you interested in the job? And so I got a job working for them at that time. I should also mention I was not good at this job. I enjoyed the cooking aspect of it, but I later found out I was going to have to start pushing products, and that's the part that I did not like. So I would just show up and tell people like, "Oh, you don't have to buy that. You can go here and get this cheap." I was really bad because I felt bad if they couldn't afford the products. But anyway, so because I didn't have that culinary background, that culinary training, I should say. I always felt a little bit intimidated, I guess would be the best word. And so, what I would do in order to kind of one up the other instructors before every class, I taught the kids' classes. I would study everything I could about the dish. And so by doing that, I thought I would make myself appear a lot more competent, not appear, but you know what I mean. I just wanted to feel more comfortable about the dish so that when I'm talking about it, I can speak intelligently and people will know, I kind of know my thing as far as the food and things like that. So that's how I got into that, researching and studying the
well,
history of
hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep on jumping in there because
solo.
I feel like that you really like you're not really sharing a lot of the things that you've really done. So I'm going to share with those who are listening the topics and lectures that you have been a part of.
Mhm.
I'm gonna read the short list. So
Oh,
all
okay.
right, so you are an engaging lecturer that you cover topics ranging from holidays and uh, celebratory occasions of enslaved Americans. How was it evolved? The history of Juneteenth, which we're going to talk about that here in a second. Dispelling myths of Juneteenth, the story of Black emancipation in the Americas, the evolution of African American foodways, the Great Migration, tracing the routes of Southern families. What else is it? The history of freedmen communities. So you
Yeah.
have this brevity of different topics that you talked about, and I will, and just to, so that way you understand the impact of the work that you do. There are very few people that I've met in, I guess you would say, southwestern region or from the southwest region in the United States that have put together, that I personally know, that have put together this type of body of work that you've done. And that's why I keep going back to talking about the things that you've done, because these type of campaigns that you're doing, the work that you're doing, you typically hear in more of the southern states or on the East
Yeah.
Coast, or maybe Chicago, Atlanta, or wherever else. But you're doing that right here in the Southwest region. You're doing it in Texas.
Mhm.
So so please receive that the work that you're doing is very impactful. And if you didn't do that brunch back in 2018,
Yeah.
think about if you did, you doing the brunch the way you do, and what had, and that impact on what brunch culture and Texas has been today in the
Mhm.
Dallas area.
Mhm.
If somebody didn't attempt to copy you, there would not be other type of campaigns or brunch activities in the area.
Well, thank you.
Now
Thank you.
let's talk about Juneteenth.
Yes.
Now you are passionate about Juneteenth, and I love it. And so, what is it about Juneteenth? From you take your background as a writer, as
Yeah.
a as an author, as journalist, and all those things, your love for history and food and culture. How did Juneteenth arrive on the day?
Whew. I think, I'm trying to figure out how to answer that. I think my passion for Juneteenth arose from remembering that, remembering being in school or remembering meeting new friends who weren't from Texas and sharing with them a part of our culture, a part of our traditions in Juneteenth. And back in the day, some folks may not know this, but back in the day, Juneteenth was not cool. Like, it was a lot of people that thought we were dumb for celebrating a day that meant it was a delay in emancipation. That, in their opinion, that's they perceived it as being like this delay. And why would you celebrate something that you just didn't even know about? And so that was kind of their attitudes. And so for a really long time, that is what the perception was. And so coming from that to now having Juneteenth celebrated on a national scale, and seeing so many people sharing myths about a tradition that had been embedded in my family and in my culture for generations. I always talk about that. I'm like a fifth, or some people have said I don't know how it works, but I call myself a fifth generation. Some people say I should be saying sixth, but at any rate, my family has been here a very long time on my mother's side, and I'm proud of that. And so whenever I think about Juneteenth, I think about how I literally had members of my family who were here and affected by that. And so for me, that's a way that I can preserve their culture, and by sharing, what these truths are. And so that's really where my passion for it came from.
Okay, so I think I heard you say that you met Miss Opal.
Oh yes, I know Miss Opal very well, Dr. Opal Lee. I'm also I'm a board of director member for the National Juneteenth Museum. We are slated to open in 2025. Super excited about that. So yeah, I know her and her family, and they're doing an amazing, talk about an amazing body of work. They have really done some wonderful things, and not just them. I know obviously they're working with a number of different people, and as she did, to get Juneteenth recognized as a national holiday. So
Now, at the ripe young age of, what was it, 89, and this was in 2016, I believe. She walked 1,400 miles
you know,
from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C.,
yeah,
to make sure that lawmakers made Juneteenth a federal holiday.
isn't that crazy?
That
Like
is,
I,
look, I'm
I
just
bet,
now getting into being comfortable walking the 3 miles a day. She did
yeah.
1,400 at 80 something years old. So when you met her, for those, I've never met her, and I'm inspired by the story, and to know that someone with that spirit made that happen today. How was it when you had a chance to meet her or talk to her? What was her spirit and energy like to walk or to have that type of fight?
She is such a talk about passion. I think we could all learn a lot from Miss Opal, but I remember the very first time I met her was a few years ago, and I had to interview her. I was writing a story about Juneteenth for Visit Fort Worth. And during this call that I was interviewing her on, we started talking, and then we found out that she had like family from Sherman that are still there right now. And then we also realized that we had some connections through East Texas roots. My grandmother is from Crockett, Texas. And a lot of folks back in the day, that's not unusual. A lot of folks were kind of from that area, which we can talk about that later. That's a part of Texas history, Texas Black history. So that wasn't uncommon, but we discovered we had a lot of connections. And so that's one way I kind of connected with her. And then the other is that I think although you said you haven't met her yet, trust me, I believe that your paths will cross and you'll get the opportunity to meet her. She is such a force to be reckoned with. And not only does she have passion and drive, and I think that's it, her drive to just get things done. It's so admirable. And I really respect her for that. So her schedule is crazy. Like, I thought I had a busy schedule, but she's always on the go. She's always busy. And I actually just said that the other day. I told somebody, man, she is always on the go. I feel lazy compared to her. And I do a lot of stuff. I pack a lot in my day, but I feel like I don't know how many hours she has in a day, but I need some of that.
So she definitely has a fire that we all should. And everybody has a story of why you do what you do. And
Yeah.
she found her purpose and she's done something amazing that we all benefit from. Now there are a couple other things in regards to Juneteenth that you kind of skipped over the fact that you are now writing for the Fort Worth Telegram, right?
No, it's actually a Fort Worth Report. I'm a columnist there, and I have a weekly column called The Dish with Deah. So there I'm able to focus on not just Black food culture, but I'm also able to focus on Tarrant County, or Fort Worth, and then Tarrant County larger culture, food culture. And so I try to write through the lens of history in any way I can. I try to inject some education in there. But at the end of the day, it's just all about food and dining in Tarrant County.
So if you look back to when you said earlier that you perceived the Southwest Brunch Fest as a failure,
Yeah.
you take that time frame of 2017, 18-ish time frame. Let's just go back to 2016. 2016-ish time frame today. Did you ever imagine that those experiences would lead you to the place that you are now with writing in newspapers and doing more of your passions and combining writing and food culture together?
Absolutely not. Like, never in a million years. I did not. I grew up in an age where I didn't see any writers that looked like myself around here. Obviously, in other parts of the country, yes. But sometimes it's about seeing those influences in front of you. And for myself, I didn't know any. So I thought, how am I supposed to make a living writing? How am I supposed to make a living teaching people about my culture? Where's the money in that? That's what I thought to myself. And so I actually quit my job. I was working like a regular corporate job, like a lot of us are used to, getting up my 9 to 5. And I just was not, I was getting a paycheck. I was there physically, but emotionally, I never felt very attached to my work. And then it took me getting laid off, which I guess could be, some may call another quote unquote failure, but I don't. But it took me getting laid off during COVID to kind of force me to come to terms with the fact that I needed to do something that would have a bigger impact. And at that time, I wanted a job. Obviously, I was unemployed for a very long time, like through almost all of 2020. And then I had a friend of mine that told me about this job. I had mentioned to her I wanted to work in history some kind of way. And so at that time, I wasn't thinking about getting a PhD or anything. I just thought, I love history. The tours are doing well by now. It would be really dope if I could be around history all day. I don't know how I'm going to make that work. But a friend of mine at the end of 2020 told me about a museum that was hiring. And I thought, this is my opportunity. This is my chance. So I got a job working at a museum here in Dallas. And so I loved it. I was director of programming. I got to program historical events. That was my 9 to 5. And I thought I would be there for a while. But as fate would have it, I was there for a couple of years. And then in 2022, I decided, you know what, I just started feeling, I don't know if you've ever gone through this, Apollo, but when you're not supposed to be somewhere, you start feeling really uncomfortable. Everything, people start doing things to you, like literally, it was so uncomfortable for me to be in that space. Mentally, I knew I was going to have to get out. And so that's what I did. In February, Black History Month, I turned in my notice. I didn't have no plan, which is not like me. I'm normally a planner. And I just remember feeling so confident that I didn't know what the heck was going to happen to me, but it could not have been any worse. And so I,
Yeah, we share that story. So we share commonality in that story. So I'll quickly share mine because you have some. There are
yes,
three other things that I want to talk about that you are doing that are amazing. So when I tell people about, people ask me, did I ever think that OKC Black East would be what it is?
yeah,
And I told them no, because what, and I often tell this, and I'll make it really quick. I was the number one account manager in the Western Hemisphere at a large oil and gas company. No engineering background. I was kicking butt, taking names. Just moved to the Galleria in Houston. I was having a good time. I took my first international trip solo, and then my operations director asked me if I want to move to Oklahoma. I said no, and that day I got sick. I went home. I got sick. I was like, I got the flu or something, and I've never had the flu or anything like that.
yeah.
And so I remember I went to sleep, and I had a very vivid dream. God talking to me. I prayed and woke up, and it was like nothing ever happened. And so when I got here, fast forward December 26, 2018, God said that you're not going back to work. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I said some other choice words. Like I was talking to God, like he was like the homie sitting right here, like it ain't happening. And then I put my notice in a month later. And when I walked out January of 2019, there was a rainbow in the sky when I walked out the building, and I still didn't have much of a plan.
Yeah.
It's definitely been hard, but like you, taking those passions of the experiences from the past that have uniquely come together to create something I just wouldn't dare think I would be able to do.
Yeah.
So, and so as you are just reflecting in this moment right now, how does it make you feel to know that you persevere through so many different things and get into this place, and you tried things that worked and that maybe didn't work out as well, or you tried things that worked very well, and now you're at this different phase of, I think I know what I'm doing, and I'm starting to feel like I'm getting my feet under me. Like, what is it? How does that feel now compared to 7 years ago?
Honestly, it feels phenomenal. It's indescribable. It feels so good to wake up in the morning and just really be living your purpose. You know, I never felt this good before. I feel like I'm just getting started. You know, it feels phenomenal. I don't know, indescribable.
Okay. All right. So now let's leap over to these three amazing projects that you have, right?
Yeah.
You know, we talked a little bit, and you shared some new information before we got on, and you talked about this app
Mm-hmm.
that your company is developing that's coming out next year.
Yeah.
So talk to us as much as you can. I know there's some things you can share, but talk to us a little bit about why the app and what the app will do for your business in the tech space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to talk about my app would also require us to going back to that conversation about failure and how we perceive failures. So I initially got the idea for an app called Nostalgia Black app when I was on my bus. It was right before COVID hit, so it was 2019. I'm on the bus, and I'm the historian, so I always tell people about the history. I'm also very I like to talk with my hands. I'm a visual learner, I guess you would say. And so in the middle of my teaching someone or educating the bus, I started thinking, man, it would really be great if here in Texas, we're not necessarily known for preserving our architecture. And so a lot of these spaces that I'm teaching people about, which I know you have run into as well, being in Oklahoma, specifically there in Tulsa with all of that rich history, a lot of times the buildings are no longer here. And so it initially started as a way for me to preserve the history by connecting it visually for people. And so I kind of went to the drawing board for that. Persevered, had a lot of setbacks. Like people, the last thing that happened was that someone was going to write over a check for us to get the app started. I had the beta version, and then at the end, like they completely pulled out. And so it was a huge embarrassment for me in the sense that I had already announced it. And it hurt, but I had to dust myself off, and I never gave up on the app idea. I just put it to the side, and I thought Nostalgia Black is my business. I'm still gonna, focus on that. And so how I focused on it was through the writing. I worked on my crafts. And so I worked on that. I worked on my public speaking. I worked on researching. I had amassed all this other stuff that we spoke about. And then the timing was wrong. Fast forward to 2 years later, and I was approached by, and thank you for sharing that. I can't say specifically who all the parties are involved, but it's going to be a really great, phenomenal project with Dallas, here in Dallas, and it's tentatively known as the Freedom Trail. And so my role in it, Nostalgia Black's role in it, will be able to use technology to bring Black history to life. And so that is essentially what the app was going to do. So we've had to pivot a little bit in that it won't be housed on my platform, not yet. That's the end goal ultimately, but just really being able to put my stamp on it and be aligned with something that's going to have a huge impact for the city of Dallas. I'm super excited about. And so that's going to be release date of June, in time for Juneteenth, 2024. And yeah, that's another exclusive. I have not announced that to anyone. So I'm really excited about what's coming, and I'm excited about being able to bring these visions to life that I kind of had to sit on for 2 years because nobody wanted to pay.
Yeah, we often experience that in entrepreneurship where you have great ideas and people love your ideas and they probably have a check, they just don't want to pay for it. So, but in the technology space, it's often researched and noted that, in the technology world, in many industries, there's a lack of representation in the industry. So as you were developing this app, what are some things that you were excited to discover about this new space of technology that can help grow not just your brand, but also an opportunity for you to let people see how talented you are in terms of writing about history and Black culture? What are some things you learned in this tech world?
So really, I guess the best way to answer that is that I learned that preservation can look like a lot of different things. And even though I was interested in tech, I don't think I really realized the brevity of what it would mean for preservation and how necessary it is. And so there are a lot of different ways that we can preserve culture. And I think the more we get people leaning into the tech space, the better. Technology is important because that's where the future is, And so it could be something as light as like a digital platform online. That's still considered tech. It doesn't have to necessarily be an app, but there are so many different avenues. And I think that's probably the hugest aspect that I learned, that when you think about it, it's pretty obvious, but I never considered that. And there's also money in that, federal grants available for the funding and the preservation of different aspects of culture, in particular Black culture. And I think it's so important for we as Black people to be on the forefront of those companies and those organizations that are monetizing and trying to capitalize on our culture, it's important for us to be in the forefront of those conversations so that we can lead the way, and also, be paid for our work.
Absolutely. And oftentimes, especially well, let me clarify my thoughts so that way I don't say this the wrong way. I believe that what Black people do for, especially technology, if you look at Clubhouse, if it wasn't for Black people, there would be no Clubhouse.
Nope.
And we flooded Clubhouse at the beta version. When you look at the change with Instagram adding threads, it was the influx of Black people, African American culture, hip hop and rap artists and R&B artists that have grown these technology platforms that they know that we are the first people to download and adopt.
Yeah.
But we're often the last one to be able to invest in or create those platforms because we're pushed out of those in the tech space. So I love the idea of you be able to have your own app to be able to spread the word and to educate others about Black culture history. So you mentioned to me that you are on the you are on the board, or you're an advisor for the National Juneteenth Museum in Fort Worth. Talk to us briefly about that, and what does that mean for the DFW area to have a National Juneteenth Museum?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's the National Juneteenth Museum, and a lot of people are probably wondering, what is the National Juneteenth Museum doing in Fort Worth, Texas? And I'll tell you, it goes back to Miss Opal, Dr. Opal Lee, and her efforts. She actually has had a museum that's been around for over 20 years. A lot of people don't know about it. And so this is just a way, to my knowledge, that is the longest running, continuous running one in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And so there hasn't been one that's been truly devoted to the study and the archival of Juneteenth itself. And so that, number one. Number two is that she's done a lot, as everyone knows, for the fight, or the plight, I should say, for Juneteenth. And so that is slated, as I mentioned earlier, to open in 2025. It's going to have a huge impact on not just DFW, not just Dallas Fort Worth in particular, but it's a national museum, and so it's going to have national appeal. And so because of that, we are opening up the conversation to not just studying and preserving Juneteenth history. We're going to be talking a lot about emancipation across the board and what that looks like. So say, for example, I'll give you one example, for the oh, my brain is had a brain flip just now. The Underground Railroad.
Okay.
A lot of people are not aware that because we're in Texas, it would have been pretty difficult, although some did it, to go north. And so another route that they took was going south. And so it will open up conversations that can educate people about emancipation and what that looked like on a national scale, not just Juneteenth, number one. And then secondly, what emancipation looks like for different states. So Texas, for example, is not the only state to have a Black Emancipation Day. Some other states have been celebrating for a while, similar to Juneteenth. They just don't receive as much recognition. Juneteenth is by far the largest and the most celebrated, and I think I speak for everyone when I say it was also possibly the most capitalized on. And so this museum will also be a way for us to educate people about other states and how they've celebrated their emancipations, so that we don't erase their voices.
Yeah, we often in Oklahoma, there's often this light connection to Juneteenth, but then when you add in the layer of Black freedmen's to the conversation, it wasn't until 1866 that Black freedmen's were freed from the native nations, because they were also enslaved amongst the tribes as well. So there's a lot of ways that, and I'm glad to hear that. And Fort Worth just a short drive away from Oklahoma
Yeah.
City. So now you have this writing. You're involved in the museum, and you have the Freedom Trail app. Now,
Mhm.
the short time we have left, there are two other things I want to make sure we talk about, because we have to talk about these two fellowships that you have. And the
Yeah.
first one that I want you to talk about is Preserve the Pit. Now, Preserve the Pit, that was with
Yeah.
Kingford, right?
Yes, with Kingsford. Let me tell you, that just technically wrapped. I'm using air quotes
Okay.
because I always tell my mentor, you get connected with the mentor through this fellowship with Kingsford. My mentor is none other than Mr. Rasheed Phillips, the
Okay.
gentleman smoker. Huge, highly impactful pit master and entrepreneur. So I was so
Now,
blessed to
hold on,
be.
like, you can't skirt over that. You got to let people really understand what, who, and what he is in relation to barbecue. You have to, you got to tell people, like, look, Dr. Barry Mitchell. Okay,
Honestly
now
to cover
I,
this, but in the
mhm,
interest of time, I'll just
okay,
say, as far as his entrepreneurship, he has shows, not only with YouTube, but other platforms, huge grasp of marketing with companies. And so his name is out there, his brand is huge. He also owns a media company. So he has ties in production. Yeah, he's huge. Like on top of having a career in barbecue. So if you don't follow him, again, his name is Rasheed Phillips. That's with one L because I always make the mistake of putting two L's on there. Um, but I was teamed up with him to be my mentor for the Kingsford Preserve the Pit Fellowship. And this is the very first time that they've offered this fellowship up, the application open to people like myself who are in media. So while I don't have a career in barbecue, restaurateurship, or anything like that, I was able to apply to the program because of the work that I've done on my side of things, preserving Black barbecue culture, which is what Preserve the Pit is. So Preserve the Pit is a program that was started. It was the idea, the brainchild of Dr. Howard Conyers, who was another huge name in barbecue and agriculture and really Black food in general. He's also the former host of a show that was on PBS called Nourish. So I had met him a few years ago. He was also a kind of a off the record mentor of mine and also a good friend of mine. Today I can call him. So this was his idea initially. He approached Kingsford and he wanted to offer a program to kind of help amplify the voices of these Black unknown pit masters. And so that's how the program started. This is I believe, the third year for Preserve the Pit. I applied to the program because this was the first year that they would have a media kind of fellow reserved for one person, and then the rest of the slots would be filled by people that were actual like barbecue pit masters or enthusiasts, whatever they want to refer to themselves as. So I found out I got that earlier this year. I was so excited. And with that, it comes with not only an influx of there's funding available to you. So they award you with the check. But in addition to that check, you get the opportunity to be paired with a mentor. And like I said, my mentor I was paired with is Rasheed Phillips. And we would have weekly meetings and really an opportunity for him to give me the lowdown and kind of help guide me through the process of growing my business. And he's been available for like even smaller questions. Like one of the things I struggled with was just, I have so many balls in the air. How do I succeed at this and not drop any more balls? Because sometimes, that happens.
right.
And so even by offering advice, like how he uses Google, something as small as that, up to something larger, like what I need to look for with marketing companies, what to expect. Yeah, he's been a tremendous player in terms of educating me about a lot of different stuff. And I'm really blessed to have been partnered with him. So even though the fellowship is technically over, I told him I'm still going to be calling him all the time. And so I'm really proud to have been connected with that. So that's one fellowship that I won this year. And
So
then,
now the other one.
yes.
Now, if you don't pay attention to food, you've not watched food shows, you cannot talk about food shows without talking about Julia Child. You
Yeah.
absolutely cannot. And so you also got a fellowship with the Julia Child Foundation, right?
Yes, I
So,
did.
and that's ongoing right now, right?
Yeah, that's going to be through, I'll serve as a fellow with that until next year. I believe next March or April, if I'm not mistaken, 2024. So yeah, I'm the current fellow for the Julia Child Food and Gastronomy Foundation. And again, it comes with a scholarship for my work at UNT. And so this one in particular, they have different awards for different schools. Because I attend a school that is lucky enough to have a program that is food history, the food history department awards one fellowship every year. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm also the third recipient for the Julia Child. This is the third year, just like with the. So this was just my year. Yeah. And so I won that right before I found out about Preserve the Pit. So I got like good news back to back. But with that, in addition to the scholarship and the funding, financial funding again, it comes with not necessarily mentorship, but an opportunity to promote the works of not only myself, but others who are in food history at the University of North Texas. So they have a tremendous program. I'm really excited to kind of sink my teeth into, so to speak. And I'll be even more excited after I graduate and get this dissertation over with.
You're a Dr. Berry Mitchell. You are almost there. You're almost at the finish line. So just listening to, your body of work and your experiences and your persistence of being an entrepreneur, and there's an entire navigation when you are discovering your purpose.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm not going to put words in your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
but do you believe that you have found the thing that you are supposed to do with your life, with your skills of writing and passion for food? Do you believe you found your way to bring those worlds together now to fulfill your specific purpose?
Absolutely. I feel that now. I could not have probably said the same thing had you asked me 2 years ago, although I was doing my tours and I was, kind of getting my feet wet in terms of writing. But I didn't feel like I didn't feel like it was necessarily my sole purpose. But I definitely feel that now. And it feels like $1,000,000, to be able to make a living doing something that I'm passionate about. And not only am I passionate about it, but I get to meet different people and I'm going to have an impact that lasts longer than myself. And that just feels, yeah, again, indescribable. I just feel extremely blessed.
Okay, so I got one last question before we close out.
Yeah.
So let's say I am an aspiring entrepreneur.
Mhm.
I'm a high school age person. I'm a
Okay.
teenager. I'm a teenager, and I want to become an entrepreneur, but I don't really know what that is.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I'm going to college. It's not even to put the college. I'm just trying to figure out what it is that I want to do with my life.
Mhm.
And if I'm sitting in front of you as a teenager, and I'm asking the future Dr. Berry Mitchell, I'm putting it out there in the atmosphere for you. What are two things that you would recommend that an aspiring entrepreneur do as they're starting their journey? What would you recommend from your experience that they start with? What are two things?
You know what? We kind of touched on this already, and that is don't be afraid to try. just try anything. Even if you fail, it may not be a failure. It may be that years from now, 2 or 3 years in my case, it may circle back around and maybe the timing just wasn't right. Or if it is a failure, that's okay too, because sometimes we learn from those failures. It's in those moments that we can see how badly we want something. And it really pushes you to go harder, to drive harder. Um, that's one. And then secondly, I would say I cannot stress enough how important it is to do something that, a lot of people say, find your passion, find something you would do for free. I don't think it's said enough that entrepreneurship is hard. It's difficult. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, I didn't think I wanted to be. I thought the tours would just be my side job and I would do everything else. That's okay too, but you need to learn whether or not you want to exert your energy into doing something like that. If you have the drive and you have the energy to devote to doing something like this on a full-time scale, then you need to hit it hard. And when you hit it hard, know that you're giving up those 9 to 5 hours. Not all the time, but some days I do have pretty good hours that I fix for myself. But on the days that I'm busy, I could be up at 3 o'clock writing because I get an idea or because I need to finish a project. Some days, on Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm gone all day because I'm juggling having a career in school and being at school all day. So I think the bigger kind of point that I want to drive home to people is that just don't be afraid to work for it. It's gonna come. It will pay off eventually. And that message I would apply to a high schooler, just like I would apply it's applicable to an adult like me who made the transition, just like you did, of going from working one particular job to working a completely different type of job. So that's it.
I love that. Yeah, it definitely requires a lot of hard work. And whether it's being an entrepreneur or you are in corporate or whatever the aspect is, I was listening to someone this morning and they talked about the attributes of some of your most successful people. And so your most successful people do some key things. And the key thing that they do is they wake up early in the morning. They start their day early because the early part of their day, they're able to dedicate that time to themselves. I often wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, but there was probably about a year and a half, a 2-year period when I was up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And that time that I had to myself was reflective. It was time for prayer, meditation to set my day. So when I was starting my day, people were still asleep or they hadn't gotten started. So I was able to get more done by waking up early. So this is definitely whether it's entrepreneurship or you're trying to find or uncover the thing that's important to you, rising up early and setting your intention, it also matters. And it's not pursuing a purpose or uncovering a purpose that's uniquely designed for you. It is absolutely an journey, and something you mentioned earlier, which I love what you said. It was your excitement about doing something you love, like finding the thing that you love. So future Dr. Deah Berry Mitchell, I appreciate you taking the time of your Thursday to share your story, how you started with the Southwest Brunch Fest and the Soul of DFW tour, and the book that you have with Cornbread Greens. You're an author, writer, speaker, journalist. You do all of these great things. But what I love the most about the work that you do is you truly found your passion and your skills in writing and combining that with culture to educate people that makes an impact. And all the work that we do, and the reason why I decided to create this podcast is an opportunity to talk about amazing Black talent across our country and ways that we've used food and culture to make a broader impact, which is why we say our mission is bigger than food. So I definitely thank you for your time and thank you for joining us. And so if someone wanted to follow you, find you to support you in your tours or to book you for a speaking engagement or whatever that may be, how can they find you?
The easiest way is just go to deahberrymitchell.com. Yeah, and follow me on all social media platforms at the same name, Deah Berry Mitchell. That's it. Berry like the fruit.
So I put it down in the caption so you also see at the bottom of your screen. Follow her on social media. Definitely support her. And I thank you for your time. And we're going to wrap this session up, y'all. This is episode 12 of the Bigger Than Food podcast. We had a great conversation with the future Dr. Deah Berry Mitchell. So please follow her and support her. If you have some speaking engagements, if you wanted to order her book, just go to her website and find her. She's definitely an inspiration of you taking your passion in writing and culture. You can do those things. You can do both of those things. So whatever your passions are, pursue those. You have to be persistent. You have to give it your best every day. So appreciate y'all for tuning in for episode 12 of the Bigger Than Food podcast. But before I go, I have a request of you. Please make sure you go to our YouTube channel. At our YouTube channel, really easy. If you just go to YouTube and do Black Eats, then you'll see it. Or you also look down in the bottom of the caption here and subscribe and like this show. It gives us the algorithms that we need to keep going. But until next time, until next week, we'll see you for the next episode, episode 13 of the Bigger Than Food podcast.